Okay, so welcome back, my friend Bakari. I got to start off by asking you this. What's happening in Georgia politics right now? I mean, they've twice not elected maybe the most qualified candidate out there, and I'm referring to Stacey Abrams. And now they're embroiled in this, ridiculous Herschel Walker, Reverend Warnock runoff. Why does Georgia always seem to be on the verge of becoming blue and then somehow revert back to red?
Well, that's actually a really good question because of people who...
We aim to please here at Mea Culpa, by the way.
People who don't know Georgia probably would question similarly. Georgia's not a blue state. In fact, I would probably argue that Georgia's not even yet a purple state. It's probably still a red state. You've had really exceptional Democratic candidates run against really poor Republican candidates in a climate that was interesting, to say the least. I think Warnock will win Georgia. I think Warnock will win Georgia by probably 3.5 points, which is a lot right now. But, Stacey Abrams, in this environment running where you have a president who's unpopular against an incumbent who is popular, it was a hard race from the fundamentals of it. Warnock's race is different. He's run a different type of race. He doesn't have some of those isms that Stacey Abrams has to deal with, sexism, etc. But he's running a campaign that's more centrally focused on Georgia. He doesn't have the resentment of the celebrity that Stacey had, which is unfortunate and no doing of her own. And he's also running against Herschel Walker. So, I think that Georgia is doing what it can do. Georgia is not Virginia. Hell, Georgia is not even North Carolina in terms of being purple. But I think Warnock is still going to pull this out in the people of Georgia. Georgia is funny because people think of Atlanta as being Georgia, and it ain't. I mean, you got Atlanta, you have Columbus, you have Savannah, you have Richmond County, which is Augusta. But that's about it. Everything else is those little small counties, man. That's you saw Brian Kemp run up the vote total there. And I expect Herschel Walker to do something similar.
Oh, right. Okay. I get it. There's obviously the star power that Herschel Walker came to the race with as a truly superb athlete, football player. However, and I can't figure this out. I can't figure out why there's even a runoff, why the numbers already didn't have Raphael Warnock, right, as the senator. It makes no sense to me. And I bring that up simply because, and I just want to throw some things in here. Nobody will argue that Herschel Walker was a phenomenal football player, but there's something fundamentally wrong with the guy who takes his home as Texas, takes deductions from his real estate taxes or wherever the taxes were for, and yet is running in Georgia. But what's amazing is even the wave of criticism on a whole bunch of fronts, right, in terms of these gaffes that everyone refers to as, head-scratching nonsense, right? Embarrassing as all, right? Flat out lying to the American people, which of course, he has learned very well from Donald on how to do that. But let me just give you an example on some of the gaffes that are so fundamentally flawed that the notion he could still be even in this race, again, makes me scratch my head. So when he's claiming that the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't help Americans, do you remember the answer why? And he claims because a lot of money, it's going to trees. And I'm referring to trees. I don't know, maybe that's a slang term for something, but not from what I could figure out. And he followed up, we have enough trees. Then he goes on and he shows this laminated special deputy sheriff badge in order to talk about how, right, he's part of law enforcement, that he can actually do with that fake badge that you could buy in a 5 and dime store, or if you make $100 donation to your local PBA that you can end up getting. I mean, claiming, right, that it affects women more than men, this whole entire thing, because they got to buy groceries. I mean, I'm not sure which one is more offensive, which one is stupider, and this is just recent gaffes that he made. Every single day, he's out there lying to the people of Georgia, lying to America, and making these stupid statements. I can't figure out why this race is even happening.
Well, I mean, the history of Georgia is what it is. I mean, yeah, you can't underestimate the fact that you bring somebody into this race who has 100% name ID. You don't have to buy that. They have the credentials of being supported by not just your former boss, but also Mitch McConnell. And so for those people who wanted to give him a chance. But yeah, I mean, from his mental health breaks and psychotic breaks that he's had, putting a gun to his wife's head, just the gaffes that you enumerated, you would hope that we're in America where he is fundamentally disqualified. I mean, I don't believe he can read well, let alone go to the United States Senate. But here we are. And you have somebody who is running against a pastor from Dr. King's church, literally. And this race is still close. I mean, it has more to do. I hear your point, and I know that many people make the same point, but this race has, and the closeness of it, has more to do with the true evolution of politics in Georgia, more so than anything else. And the fact that Georgia is moving in a direction where it can be purple one day, it just ain't there yet.
I get that. But at the end of the day, I understand that they want the Senate, or they wanted the Senate to be Republican controlled. It's not. It's not going to happen. On top of that, they're now, it'd be nice to have an additional Democrat, in the Senate. Yes. However, more important than even the additional Democrat in the Senate, it's having somebody that's competent. There was a guy by the name of Fred Wellman. I saw a quote, a tweet that he put out, and he was he was making fun of Herschel Walker's special deputy sheriff's badge, right? By saying in the 70s that he had received from like TWA or one of the airlines, he received the wings that the pilots have when he was a kid. And I'm sure you remember that also, the days that they didn't quadruple lock the doors, and the kids were allowed to go in, say hi to the pilots and so on. That now makes him a pilot, and that he's now competent to go fly an airplane. So I want people to think about the analogy, because it's exactly true. What's the difference if you have plastic wings given to you by the steward, right? Or the stewardess, and this fake Cobb County Sheriff's, badge, there in Georgia? It's the same thing. You could basically wear it, pull it out, do whatever you want with it, but it gives you no ability. And he has no ability within which, as far as I'm concerned, to make decisions on behalf of Georgia, especially as a senator.
Yeah, I don't, you're not going to get any pushback from me, and I don't think I disagree with that at all. I think that there is a huge resentment, particularly amongst Black people, by how ignorant he is. But Raphael Warnock is running the perfect race as well. And so, and he's a really good, and he is a good candidate. He's got all the right attributes. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens, because I think Raphael Warnock will be a name that a lot of people hear from in 2024 after he gets through December 6th.
Yeah, let's hope so. Now, speaking of Georgia, Lindsey Graham testified before the Fulton County grand jury the other day. And Fani Willis's election fraud case, it seems to be going full speed ahead. What's your take on how the case is shaping up, and how do you predict that it'll ultimately turn out?
I think Fannie's going to indict Donald Trump, frankly speaking. And I think that she is putting everything in order to do so. She's a dynamic prosecutor. She's somebody who dots all her I's and crosses all of her T's. She's very, very, very aggressive. I mean, this may not mean much to some of your listeners, but she's indicted every rapper in Atlanta. It feels like almost. I mean, she has Young Thug and Young Gunna. She does not care about stature of potential defendants. She builds her cases methodically. And I am now the other thing is I know Lindsey Graham's legal defense team because we're all in the same legal profession here in South Carolina, and they're damn good. So he didn't go in there half stepping or half cocked. I'm interested to see what questions he actually answered, what he pled the fifth, because Lindsey's unique problem was that Lindsey has criminal exposure as well, because of the pressure that he put on the Secretary of State. And I think that was one of the greater fears that Lindsey had. I don't think she's going to do anything with Lindsey. I think that would be far overreaching. It would be something I don't advise. But I do think that she's going to indict the former president of the United States.
Then let me ask you this, because despite being disbarred, I still have my JD. They can't take my education. They can't take my mind. But I don't understand what's taking so long. It's not as if the evidence is going to change from Monday to Friday. It's the same evidence that they were able to have obtained 6 months ago and a year ago.
Let me push back, because they weren't able to obtain it all. I mean, I think that it's hard to indict the president of the United States without Lindsey Graham's testimony. And there are a lot of people who are similarly situated in terms of trying to squash. That's not the word. It's not squash. My law partner would fight me for that. Quash subpoenas, which is the word. There are a lot of individuals who are trying to stay this procedure. So I would say that she's moving at appropriate speed. It ain't as fast as we want, but she is moving, and they literally just got Lindsey Graham's testimony, which I think is integral. I don't think you can indict Donald Trump without making sure that you have all of your information there. And she is somebody I don't, I worry about Alvin Bragg. I think he's terrible. Fani Willis ain't in the same category. She's actually a really, really good prosecutor.
Now, I've been very critical of Alvin Bragg. I mean, I spent more than 12 sessions with the district attorney's office, 3 of which I was still up in Otisville that they came up to see me. That's how they ended up with the tax returns. That's where that whole Supreme Court case came from. And I know the documents, and I know the information, and I know the case almost as well as the 2 lead attorneys that ended up leaving, Mark Pomerantz and Carrie Dunn, both of whom left, not because of what Trump was saying on his Untruth Social, which is that they realized that there's no case against him and that they're sorry about it, and so that they walked off. That's a fucking lie. That's just a blatant fucking lie. They left because they wanted to indict him, that they believed that there was enough information to indict him, and Alvin Bragg chose not to. Now, the story is allegedly that he is contemplating on bringing an indictment against Trump based upon the campaign finance violations that I ended up pleading guilty to in federal court. We'll see what happens there. Hopefully that he does. It'd be nice to see him redeem himself in some way, but rest assured, whether he does or he doesn't, we have Tish James here, our fearless, unsinkable attorney general that is going to take the entire Trump organization apart financially based upon the fraud that they committed, and that she has already referred to the Southern District of New York as well as to the IRS. Tax evasion claims as well as other illegal acts.
Yeah, no, I don't have any. I'm like you. I don't have any faith in Alvin Bragg. I saw that he was reopening the Stormy Daniels investigation, but look, he's not worth a whole lot. But Fani Willis and Tish James, I think you named 2 individuals who are doing their job and doing their job well. And I know that people want this to move faster, but I prefer it to move appropriately than move fast, because the last thing you want to do is catch Donald Trump and then he get out of a noose by, some loophole. And that's just not what we want.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. However, we are all getting somewhat affected by what, I refer to as Trump fatigue. We're still waiting for Merrick Garland to do the things that he was supposed to. One of the things that I constantly say on this program, on television, wherever, is you don't need to indict or try to convict and incarcerate Trump on every single one of his alleged crimes, right? All you need to do is get him on one. And I keep calling it the Al Capone theory. Stop with all of this other stuff, like even the January 6th committee. I think we'll have a very difficult time in terms of indicting Trump or referring that case back to Merrick Garland for an indictment and so on. I say just go after the tax evasion. We already know that his tax returns are showing that he had $1 billion loss, but yet he took $170+ million of tax benefit, refunds, and so on. We know that he lied about his home, and we know that they lied about compensation to folks like Weisselberg or Calamari or Liebman or Glick or any of the other folks there at the Trump organization that got benefits. We know what we know because, as the old expression is, numbers don't lie, people do. So get him on fucking tax evasion, Al Capone theory. Let's just knock this thing down. Every day, Captain Chaos creates another story. There's another, specific case. I mean, it's like even what's going on with January 6th right now. Now they want to speak to the Secret Service agent, that, Tony Anato had claimed, to Cassidy Hutchinson that Trump had grabbed him by the neck. Who gives a shit? Right? That's not the keystone to the case. We already know what Trump did. We have text messages. Just what are we doing? That's the problem. Everybody wants to get him on every single thing. I say, fuck it. I say, let's just stick with one easy, low-hanging fruit that we know that we already have all the documents you need for the conviction. That's my opinion.
You finally have good prosecutors now on the other side of Donald Trump. We talked about Tish James, we talked about Fani Willis, but the best prosecutor of them all is actually the new special counsel. Donald Trump's going to be indicted, and quickly, for removing those confidential documents from the White House. I have no hesitation or doubt in my mind. And when I say quickly, I mean within 365 days. And I think that—
But that's not quick. Bakari, that's not quick. Listen, let me be very clear about something here, all right? Because, I've been all over, whether it's Nicole Wallace or even Rev, politics. I've been on every show, and I say the same thing. 365 days is not quick. If it was you, it would be yesterday. If it was me, it would be 2 months ago. I had 48 hours in my case to make a decision. 365 days when you already have the documentation that proves the crime?
Get it right, though. That's what I'm saying, Michael. You got to get it right. And I think that these individuals, and I would greatly anticipate it's going to be far quicker than 365 days for the new special counsel. I mean, he's just that type of prosecutor who is damn good at his job, and he prosecutes the worst of the worst in terms of war criminals, etc. But get it right. I'd rather you get it right instead of getting it fast.
The point is you can't get it wrong here. And yes, I'm going to go with you and say Jack Smith is a fantastic prosecutor. But let's look at what we're talking about here. 1.5 years before the raid, NARA, the National Archives, requested the return of documents. Yeah. Trump said no. So they sent him another threatening letter, to which they then returned a series of documents.
Correct.
He did return some documents, but then decided to keep others. He gets a lawyer, I forget what her name is, to go ahead and to sign an affidavit that everything has already been returned.
Lady? Is it Bab?
Yes, Bab. That everything has been returned. And then, of course, there's an insider there. And again, I surmise it's probably Jared and Ivanka. But then again, it's just my opinion. And what ends up happening? They end up getting a magistrate to sign a warrant for the FBI to go and execute a search. And what do they find? Exactly the documents that they knew Trump had, that they wanted back, that he refused to give back, and acknowledges in his own words, they're mine. And I want everything that was taken from me back. And that he doesn't deny that he knew what was there. That would have been the smart move for him. But no, he comes out and says, they're mine. I declassified them. I could do whatever I want, and I declassified them. Do you remember this? Because I thought it.
Yep.
This is our stable genius. All right. If that was you who took, and especially top secret documentation, like what they did to Reality Winner, she spent 5 years for one document. He has thousands of those documents. And I think that Jack Smith can actually do this in an expedited fashion because it's not that many documents. Even if it's 10,000 documents, big shit, you could do that in under 30 days. I did 10 million in 45 days. I'm sure Jack Smith, and you don't need the Kim Jong-un crap, just use the top secret documents, use the other information that is classified, and then hold him accountable for that. I mean, we have the evidence. I can't understand what it is that should take longer than 30 days, 60 days at most here.
I know how cases work as you do, because you've been on the other end of it, and it just don't take 60 days. I mean, I don't want people to believe that it takes 60 days. I mean, it took them 6 months just to get Lindsey Graham in front of a grand jury, under oath.
Because he wasn't indicted and he wasn't, right? Because they were making the request to him in a very humanistic, in a very honorable manner.
So they didn't just say come. I mean, they did subpoena him.
Yes, because he refused to willingly come in.
He did refuse, and he fought it all the way up. I mean, so I think that you and I agree on the outcome, and we want the same outcome. We disagree on timetable, which at the end of the day, I think when these indictments come, you will agree with me, and I'll revisit the show, that all the time it took was worth it because the case is that strong.
All right, let's also make another bet. Let's do a $1 bet here. It's my famous bet, like Mortimer, from Trading Places.
By the way, you should watch.
Bet.
You should watch. You said Mortimer, but you made me think of the Addams Family. You should watch Wednesday on Netflix. It's a really, really good show. Random side.
I will watch it. So here's my dollar bet. I say within 60 days from today. All right, I'm going to take an extra day here. So by the end of January, we see an indictment, or I'm going to give myself an extra little bonus here. We're going to see the referral from Smith to Merrick Garland for an indictment on this case against Trump and Mar-a-Lago.
Nah.
By the end of January.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And the only reason I disagree with it is because of Christmas, New Year's, King Day, and the holidays that lay in between. So I think you're. The
guy was working on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
the guy worked on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, no, but I just think I think that it will happen. But I think it's probably before June 1st.
And there's our $1 bet. All right, by the end of January. All right, and I always pay my bets. So look, let me ask you this then, because you have deep roots in Southern politics. Southerners used to be primarily Democrats, and now they're obviously Republicans. But look at states like Florida. How did the culture wars serve these really red states? I mean, is it a divide and conquer strategy that they're employing, right? Rich whites and a few Cubans against everyone else? Because it seems antithetical, at least to me, to the creation of a prosperous state. You agree with that? So look, in your opinion, what's the end game here?
That's a good question. So there has been a lack of investment from Democrats in southern states for a very long period of time. You see that where you have these epicenters of learning, for example, Chapel Hill and the Research Triangle in North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, even, you look at Charlottesville, Virginia, and you look at Northern Virginia, that's where you have states that are trending blue. Or purple. And by those states trending that direction, Virginia is a purple state. North Carolina is purple. People forget that North Carolina's governor, North Carolina's attorney general are all Democrats. And they should have won this senatorial race. Sherry Beasley won a great race. They lost by 100,000 votes because we didn't invest properly. And so when you look at those states, you see that there is an investment through state legislatures. There's an investment in these institutions and areas of higher education. So that's kind of first. Florida is totally different from the rest of the South. The panhandle of Florida is the South. It's like Southern Alabama. But the rest of Florida ain't nothing like the South. And Democrats have miscalculated Hispanic voters because we lump them in as one group of voters. You spoke of Cuban voters. Well, we all know that there are multiple types of Cuban voters, depending on when you immigrated to this country, how you view politics, how you view your load in this country. You have Costa Rican voters, you have Puerto Rican voters, you have Dominican voters. You have all of these individual groups of Hispanic voters that we just simply have not targeted in a fashion that motivates them to come to the polls. And we saw Donald Trump begin that process, and we saw Ron DeSantis take it to the finish line. I say all that to say that, Democrats have to do a better job of messaging for those Hispanic voters, particularly in Florida, in order for us to have a chance. Florida right now is like, it's trending more towards Indiana. And what do I mean by that? Barack Obama won Indiana in 2008. A Democrat ain't gonna win Indiana no time soon. And so it changed extremely quickly, and Florida looks to be changing extremely quickly. Andrew Gillum lost by 35,000 votes. Charlie Crist, who was a terrible candidate, but lost by 1.5 million or something crazy like that. And so we just have to reinvest our energy in the South. We have to reinvest our energy with Hispanic voters. And in places like Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Georgia, Democrats can win if we actually run good candidates, i.e. Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, but let's just go back to what I had said previously. The fact that there's a runoff between what you and I both agree, and I think all of my listeners agree as well, that Raphael Warnock is by far the superior candidate,
no question,
over Herschel Walker. I mean, it's
Herschel Walker he's legitimately outside of like Todd Aiken and I forget the woman's name who ran in Delaware who says she's not a witch. Like outside of those extreme cases, Herschel Walker is the worst candidate who has a legitimate shot of winning of anybody that I've ever seen in my life, because the man can't read.
And the bullshit that comes out of his mouth is just smokingly stupid. But look, let me ask you this question then, because I know that you're watching the implosion of Twitter pretty closely. And, a lot of people use that term implosion. I'm not so sure that it's imploding. I'm just believing that there's a whole lot of mismanagement that's going on there as a result of whatever it is Elon Musk has decided to do and this bullshit approach to, quote unquote, free speech. I get it. I get what he was thinking. I get the whole thing of free speech. Look, I was remanded back to prison unconstitutionally because I wanted to exercise my First Amendment and Trump and Bill Barr didn't want it. My real question to you here is, if Twitter goes down in flames, and a lot of people are actually of the opinion that it might, where do the rest of us go, right, to be part of that public square, to put out our message or what I'll call, truth? Because you're not going to get that on Truth Social, that's for sure.
Instagram. No, first of all, Twitter structurally cannot collapse. I mean, it will be very, very difficult to. They have thousands of servers. They only need about 100 people to do, the work. And he's identified those few people who can do that work. I think Elon Musk is a terrible leader. I think that he traffics in racism a lot. I think that he lacks empathy. I don't think he follows or understands social cues. I think that he doesn't care for people. And that for me is, I can't rock with people who have a disdain for humanity. I don't want to have to use Twitter, but it has become, as you know, for all of us, an integral part of our platform and the way that we communicate. And if you don't interact in Twitter. People are like, well, why don't you just leave it? Well, we can't leave that vacuum without your voice and my voice there combating the crazies. Then it'd just be crazies, and they're polluting an entire generation of young people and impressionable minds. And so I hear you. I think that he is running it in the ground. I think that he is going to lose a great bit of Tesla behind it. I mean, you think of all these people, Bank of America, all these individuals who took on debt or lent him money for $44 billion. I mean, they're not going to sit here and allow you to lose tens of millions of dollars a day because you have a bad attitude. I mean, so I look forward to the plane crash. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's just, you're just watching the crash happen. But it's, for me, it's just so, it's so frustrating because Jack did a wonderful job building something that I love. And now Elon Musk is burning it down.
What's interesting is my hope is that it does not burn down, because I agree with you. We need every forum that's out there in order to continue to provide facts, to provide no more this innuendo bullshit. You want that, go to Trump's Untruth Social, and you could sit and listen to the nonsense spewed by the 12 people that follow him. I like when people keep saying, Donald is coming back. Donald's back on Twitter. Yeah, they reactivated his account, but he doesn't tweet anything out. And the reason that he cannot come back to Twitter, so people understand why he is not actively out there using Twitter, because that means that his Truth Social failed, which is just another Trump-backed company, right, that has his name on it or that he's affiliated to, that doesn't work. Right? And it's very much like his presidency. It would be a complete failure. But one of the things that I do admire, because I use all the social media platforms, is I'm on TikTok. And in a short period of time, I amassed like 250,000 followers, looking for more, but I amassed, and these people love it because I do these Michael Cohen react, videos. But there's a group of obvious Trump supporters that are constantly reporting and claiming harassment on my videos. And TikTok acts rather quickly, and then they suspend the video. And that pisses me off, but they do it. I then appeal it, saying it's factual, because in my videos I say, according to the New York Times, according to a CNN poll, according to an MSNBC poll, according to an ABC poll, according to so-and-so, I use facts to back it up. So it's not hateful if I'm reporting facts, right? You may not like the fact, and so it comes back on, and then that just generates even more interest and more views and so on. So I'm in this never-ending fight, but that's the way it should be. If, in fact, that it is inaccurate, if it's innuendo, if it's lies, mistruths, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, it should be suspended so that somebody could look at it. And that's not what Elon Musk is doing. He actually has taken that part out of Twitter, which now potentially could make Twitter extremely dangerous, especially, as we're looking towards the 2024 election. But let me ask you this, right? Now that we're in this lame duck session, what do you feel, and this is a Bakari Sellers question, what do you feel is most important for Democrats to focus on? Because we have a short period now before the next term, right? What should we be doing to ensure that Biden's agenda for the next 2 years is not completely stalled by these maniacs?
The debt ceiling. I mean, that's the number one thing. I mean, you can't allow a new Congress to come in here where I was listening to your question and reading, Kevin McCarthy already has 4 no votes, 3 present votes, and a possible other no vote. So what is that? That's 8 people who likely won't vote for him to be speaker. He can't be speaker like that. Now, imagine if somehow by the grace of God, he ends up winning that title of speaker. He's going to be held hostage religiously by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you want them to be able to, trash our credit rating, send our markets into shambles because they want something that's completely ridiculous, like, I don't know, banning interracial marriage or something like that? Do you want that to be the bargaining chip for our debt limit? No. So I say the debt limit is the number one thing. It's the most important thing. Store that away, get that done in the next 30 days, and I think we'll have a lot smoother ride come January.
Okay, so then let me ask you a follow-up. Who else then comes to mind should McCarthy not be able
Jim Jordan.
which is even worse. It's the point I was going to get to. I was hoping you weren't going to use, Jimbo, the pedophile Jordan. Jim Jordan as speaker. How much more dangerous do you think Jim Jordan is than Kevin McCarthy?
Jim Jordan's way more dangerous than Kevin McCarthy.
I agree with that.
Jim Jordan he actually has a backbone, and he stands for things that are the antithesis of what I believe, what you and I believe are right, and most Americans. But Jim Jordan actually is somebody who could get all of the base together, and all of the moderates together to coddle those votes to be speaker. And he would rule with the iron fist, something like, and people would be scared of Jim Jordan in the Republican caucus. Nobody's scared of McCarthy. He's just weak. He's just really, really weak. And so I firmly believe that if McCarthy falls through, Jim Jordan would be the next speaker. Be terrified, now, people. Be terrified.
Afraid of Jim Jordan for what reason? For what reason? He's a half-in-the-bag moron. He's a jerk-off. The guy's got a history himself, which should have precluded him, as far as I'm concerned, of getting enough votes in order to have been elected in the first place. Is there nobody better to bring in on the Republican side than somebody with as much baggage and as stupid as Jim Jordan is?
No. To answer your question, you know what? I do think there's one other dark horse out there. I just don't think he has the want to do it. And I have a great deal of respect for his resilience and his service, but Scalise is the only other person who would possibly do it. But I think Jim Jordan would be the logical, and I think he's laying in wait. The knives are already out for McCarthy. I think Jim Jordan's laying in wait, because if Jim Jordan can get those 5 votes, which they would vote for Jim Jordan, this is over.
Oh, man, let me tell you something. Jim Jordan ends up becoming speaker. I guarantee you, within 24 hours of him taking that spot, articles of impeachment get filed. No doubt in my mind. He is such a Trump loyalist, and I'm not even sure where or why that has become a reality. I just don't understand what the connection is between Jim Jordan and Trump. Trump is no longer in power. His control and his grip over the GOP seems to be waning every single day. So I'm not really sure I understand Jim Jordan's position. But then again, I never understood Jim Jordan's position. He's just he's just going to be a maniac with now the highest title that you can get for Congress. I mean, it's really scary.
And security. He'll be in security. And Secret Service.
And security. Unbelievable.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think legitimately, I mean, I think I would assume you would agree with me if you logically look at the 200 and some odd members of the.
I do agree with you.
Yeah, that Jim Jordan is probably the only logical person out there, because I'm not sure McCarthy's going to give it over the hump.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But look, at least someone like Steve Scalise, you could speak to him. Jim Jordan, you can't speak to. Jim Jordan doesn't listen. Jim Jordan likes to preach. He likes to tell you how it's going to be. He thinks he's back on the mats with the young boys telling them what to do. So, look, let me move on, because I hate Jim Jordan with a passion.
I can tell.
I was personally relieved to hear that the Biden administration has already set up a task force to deal with Trump's inevitable smear campaign against him. But what can we do about all of the bogus trials and indictments that the House is getting, and gearing up in order to start bringing against folks like Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, the FBI? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And this is where I have the disdain for Jim Jordan. But suffice it to say that they're going to go after their political enemies. And I promise you, because I know what it feels like more than anybody else alive right now. You think that the public is interested in this sort of thing? Because it doesn't put money in their pockets or food in the tables. So is it still to please the MAGA base?
Before you finish your question, it is the best thing to happen to Democrats for 2024. It is the worst overreach, and it's going to be god-awful TV for the next 2 years. They're going to be investigating Hunter Biden and Joe Biden till we're blue in the face. Kevin McCarthy is going to have to impeach Joe Biden. All of these things are going to be crazy lunacy when we literally have people starving, when we need to be coming together on certain things. We need to pass another infrastructure bill. Hell, they still don't have clean water in Jackson, Mississippi. We need to do something to shore up our Social Security. We need to do something about the border. But I thought all these things mattered. Crime, I thought all these things mattered. But the number one thing you're going to do is come back and investigate Hunter Biden. It's absolutely insane.
No, it's going to make for great television. Rest assured, I'm going to bet you another $1 now that they're going to see the ratings go up even higher as a direct result of it. They're going to put on, look, the one thing the GOP does, and substantially better, and you and I agree with this, and I don't know how many times privately I probably said to you, why don't you take over the DNC? Right? Because Jamie Harrison,
and
as good as he is.
I'm mad you said that shit out loud. Okay, don't say that out loud.
But I say it to you privately, and I'll say it out loud. I don't give a shit. America needs you, right? I can't be the only person sacrificing everything, right? At the end of the day, it's the problem with the DNC. We are horrible at messaging. The GOP is fantastic at messaging, especially lies that are spurious and that they are, controversial. So if we don't get people in, to these sort of positions where we can actually create positive messages, all that's going to basically run the television, the front pages of the newspapers is going to be Hunter Biden's laptop. It's going to be on Nancy Pelosi. It's going to be Joe Biden in Afghanistan. It's going to be Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that. Kamala Harris will get probably impeached as well. They're going to say it's the first, I think it might be even the first time that a vice president has articles of impeachment filed.
They're going to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. For
everyone. It's going to be a gigantic shit show. And I'm going to tell you something. It's going to be better than reality television. I think it will replace reality television because somewhere along the line, that's what we're becoming. It's almost like reality country. So let me then move on, since we're talking about reality nonsense. Because you know that I think that Trump's run for another term is total bullshit. It's never going to happen. But even Bill Barr, who, on par with Jim Jordan, I fucking despise, is now saying that it's time to move on from Trump. But what I'm getting from the right-wing pundits and politicians alike is that we should let Trump just fade off into the Florida sunset without consequences. Now, we talked about this before, but I want to go a little bit further in depth. You think that Jack Smith and the DOJ will ever actually prosecute Trump, right, for some of the things that we're talking about? And more importantly, when they do, because I'm with you on that one, what do you think will be the impact on our country?
That's a tough question. So that's actually a brilliant question, Michael. And it's also a very tough question, because one of the things that should not go into a prosecutor's determination of whether or not they indict somebody is the likelihood of a successful verdict or outcome. However, you and I both know that that is something that they take into account. Also, one of the other things that should not go into a prosecutor's judgment into whether or not they indict somebody is the political consequences thereof. However, you and I both know that in particular, in this case, that will be taken into account. So the first question is, will you be able to indict and find Donald Trump guilty? Tough. Very, very tough. 2, what impact will that have on the country? I don't think it should fucking matter. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And if you set a standard whereby people are above the law, then it just erodes the fabric of our democracy. So I say all this to say that I think that Mr. Smith needs to indict him sooner than later. We have a bet on that. I think it's going to be before June. You think it's going to be before the end of January. The longer it takes after primary season starts, then the more difficult it will be, because if there are 20 people running, by the way, Nikki Haley just said on the Twitter, Michael, this is breaking news. I don't know if you have a breaking news like musical dong or something that we can do, but she says she's going to take the holiday to think about whether or not she's running for president of the United States, which means she's running for president of the United States. So if you have 20 people running for president of the United States, Donald Trump is going to win the nomination. It's going to be very hard to indict somebody who wins that nomination or who is a front runner for that nomination.
You know, look, one thing that everybody will acknowledge is that he has a specific base that does not care if he shoots and kills someone on Fifth Avenue. They'll tell you that that was the greatest shot that they've ever seen anybody take. There's just something fundamentally wrong with these people, and Trump owns them.
Correct.
They're the same idiots that are funding him to the hundreds of millions of dollars in his super PAC that he's now using in order to fix his old broken down, dilapidated plane. Right? This is what he's doing. He's found a money source better than The Apprentice.
Yes.
So I'm not so sure that Nikki Haley or anybody, the more Republicans that are standing on that stage, I think to the contrary, it's a benefit to Donald, because he will have that core base that will come out and support him. And the others now have to overcome that number, which may be difficult based upon the number of people running.
I think, look, when you have people like Mike Pompeo, Mike Rogers, Nikki Haley, Asa Hutchinson, Nikki probably deserves better than to be lumped in with them. But all of those one percenters.
Liz Cheney said that she's going to run too.
She's a 1%.
Mike Pence.
Mike Pence is a 3%er. Okay. None of those individuals are credible. I think Nikki gets 5-8%. I think Tim Scott gets 5-8%. But what we're doing is we're adding up to 50%, and Donald Trump controls another quarter of it. So all he needs to do, if Donald Trump only needs a third of the vote, you and I both can do that math. I mean, we're lawyers. We know what a third is, right? So yeah. We're speaking the same language here. And I think all of that ties into the fact that, is it Jack Smith? Jack Smith has to move extremely fast.
Yep, and that's why I'm hoping I win that dollar from you. And I'm going to collect it, by the way. So, Bakari, Trump may be waning as far as what I constantly say, but the cancer that has spread throughout the GOP is not letting up. In fact, using someone like, if Ron DeSantis as an example, right, or using him as the example, my opinion is it's getting worse. Why, in your opinion, is the GOP clinging to this Trump era craziness? And who else other than DeSantis should we be watching to potentially, run for the presidency in 2024? That's what I'm more concerned about, because while we're trying to figure out who's going to be, standing on the stage, who actually has the ability to go head to head against Trump? Because Trump doesn't play fair. He doesn't play nice, that's for sure. Put a microphone and a stage and a camera in front of him, and he becomes that nasty scumbag fifth grader that says things that you would never expect to come out of the mouth of a presidential candidate or a politician. Who else other than, say, a Ron DeSantis? Could Nikki Haley, as the example, get down and dirty like that? Or is she going to try to play that nice politic game?
So there's a couple of things. If Nikki Haley is on the stage with any of these individuals we named, Nikki Haley will be the most talented person on that stage, for better or worse. I served with her. I know her. I wouldn't vote for her to save my life. But she's extremely talented. Ron DeSantis is Scott Walker. I hate people who think that Ron DeSantis is going to be the nominee, because he will not. Everybody remembers Scott Walker? You probably don't. Scott Walker, great governor.
I remember Scott.
From the right. I think he was a terrible governor, but great governor in Wisconsin. Even beat off a recall. Everybody said he's going to be president of the United States. He raised all that money. And then guess what? He didn't even make it to the first primary state. Didn't make it to the first debate. That's how Ron DeSantis is going to be. He cannot stand up to Donald Trump. He just simply cannot. If anybody wants to know why I say that, go back and watch the debate with Charlie Crist. Oh, if you want to see something even more fabulous, watch the debate with Andrew Gillum. I mean, he just got destroyed and filleted. He's just not built for the light that is going to shine on him. With all that being said, I still think Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. And I think you're going to have a 78-year-old Donald Trump against an 82-year-old Joe Biden. And I think the country deserves better than that.
Oh, we definitely do. And I don't think that that's the way it's going to go, but I don't want to bet on that one because it's fucking scary to me. Now, Bakari, you and I have now known each other for quite a long time. And I consider you, and I hope that you consider me, we're friends. Right?
Oh, I definitely consider you a friend.
Now, I'm Jewish. You're black. Are Kyrie Irving and Kanye West isolated instances before what the media is trying to put as some sort of a situation between our two groups? I mean, is there really a thing here between blacks and Jews that need to be addressed? And let me just go one step further. Like Dave Chappelle. Right? He's taken a whole lot of heat for commenting on this issue on Saturday Night Live. What do you think is really happening here?
So this is, I think, a few things. And I'm glad you asked me the question. I don't think the divide between our two communities is as large as people make it out to be. However, I think that the cancer that is the cancer that is Kanye West and the ignorance that is Kyrie Irving are dangerous. And you have to call it out. And it's like a cancer that if you don't call it out, if you don't stamp it out, if you don't try to educate people, then it becomes pervasive and it spreads. We're not at the point where it's metastasizing yet, but I don't want it to. My father, as you probably know, was a part of the search mission for Goodman, Schroeder, and Cheney in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Yep.
And so I am very keen and cognizant of the fact that many of the successes we had in the civil rights movement were due to the shared struggle and sacrifices of Jews and blacks, particularly throughout the South. I get that. I understand it. But I think we all have to do a better job of listening to one another, educating one another on our struggles. And I think listening to one another is probably the key. So I don't think we're nearly as farly divided as people make us out to be. I just think that when those things of because look, you in Charlottesville in January 6th, you had people wearing swastikas, Jews shall not replace us, and Confederate flags. So anti-Semitism and anti-Black racism are right there with each other. We see the hate every single day. We see synagogues be shot up. We see people killed in a church because they're Black. And I don't think it's worth our time or energy to be divisive or point fingers, but I think we have to stand up together against that type of bigotry and hate.
Yeah, look, I've always said that I think that the crux of the Black-Jewish relationship is largely ideological, right? I mean, we both have bonded as groups based upon our minority status, right? We've been, truthfully, and I'm with you on it, I don't think that it is as divided as some people may want to make it. There are always going to be those that want, to keep groups divided because for some reason, maybe they think that financially it benefits them. It's part of their scam or what have you. I don't know. But all I know is listening to Kanye, right? Listening to Kyrie Irving, I'm saddened by it because, look, as you know, I had a relationship with Kanye. I was there when he actually changed his name to Ye. And I've never heard him say an anti-Semitic thing to me. I've never heard him talk negatively about Jewish people. In fact, what he used to say is that he admires them because they stay together, they help each other, and he would like to see that happen more in the black communities. And I think that's probably true. As a people, we tend to work amongst ourselves and we try to lift each other up, and it would be great for all communities to do that with one another. But what would be even better is if all communities did that with all communities and we all just lift each other up. I mean, that would be the ideal situation. As to why Kyrie Irving decided to take this, as to why Ye then decided to go on this sort of insane rant, and of course everybody's talking about his...
First of all, let me speak to my Jewish brother, Michael. Black folk have disowned Kanye West for a long period of time.
Yes, they have.
We kicked him out a long time ago, and it's sad. I mean, it's so sad because you begin to feel bad for his children. After the death of his mother, you saw him just publicly fall apart, and he still is. But his anti-Semitism is dangerous. And why do people keep putting a fucking microphone in front of his face? Like, if Kanye West came to me and said, Bakari,
ratings, dude.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
Bakari, ratings. It's all about me personally, I wouldn't give him a microphone.
Yeah, I was like, no. I don't need it either. But if Kanye was like, let me come on the Bakari Sellers podcast, I'd be like, go jump in a lake.
Well, you would be one of the few people because, if he was on this show, I would say, listen, we've sat down, we've had at least 1,000 phone call conversations, text messages. I've never heard him say, and in fact, he used to say to me that he's Jewish, but he didn't say it in the right way. He'd say, I'm Jew. So I would say to him, it's the way you're even expressing yourself has an undertone of anti-Semitism, right? First of all, he believes that he's like part of the lost tribe. And so if that's true, then there's more to being Jewish than just saying you are. First of all, you run a church and you run services. Jews don't go to church, we go to synagogue. On top of that, we have circumcisions by moils. We have bar mitzvahs. There's a certain, there are holidays that you're supposed to understand and attend, and there's a religious belief. It's not just really only being born to it, but there's a way. And I said, you don't exhibit any of those. So he says, well, that's because, I didn't grow up that way. And it was a relatively decent answer, but it never, of course, got to the crux on why he believes that he's Jewish and so on. But it is kind of funny that, right, we saw Trump had dinner the other night at Mar-a-Lardo, and it's almost, I wish I could think of a great joke, right? So you have a wannabe self-hating Jew, and we'll call it Kanye, right? Ye, because he thinks he's Jewish, so he can't be anti-Semitic. You have this self-hating wannabe Jew sitting with a white supremacist, neo-Nazi, Holocaust survivor. They bring in a third asshole, this Yiannopoulos, this Milo Yiannopoulos, who I don't even think he's American. I think he's British. Used to work for Breitbart, fired probably by them, right? Because he's even too far right for Breitbart, this anti-feminist, Islamophobe, hater of everybody. And then, of course, you have the king at the head of the table, a man who I continuously describe as a racist, sexist, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semite, Donald, all sitting together. I mean, this is almost like a joke for a David Chappelle, right, type of comedian, right? How is it that he could sit there and claim that he didn't know who these people are? He's trying to sit and lie again to the American people, who thankfully most are not buying any of this bullshit, right? This is the problem, because somebody like Trump, who you think is going to be the Republican nominee, has now given a platform to these three disgraceful fucking people.
but this is going to be the conversation that we're going to have for months, because Donald Trump's an idiot, and Donald Trump plays in racism and anti-Semitism. He always has. That's always who he's going to be. And the fact that he acts like he doesn't know who Nick Fuentes is and Milo Yiannopoulos, whatever. I mean, those are despicable, disgusting human beings. That is what they are. And the fact that Kanye West is cavorting with them, I just, again, his Donda would be completely outraged by the behavior of her son. And it just is what it is. But the Republican Party is going to have to deal with this for another, we talked about 365 earlier. That was the number, but what is it, 730 days or the next 2 years with Donald Trump running for president.
All right. So listen, my friend. All right. One last question. And it's a personal one. And it's one that I constantly, again, talk to you about offline and so on. Because I know that you're a practicing lawyer. You're an activist and a commentator, right? You're also a married man with small children. So clearly, you've been busy. You ever consider about getting back into politics?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, I'm doing really well practicing law right now. I enjoy it. I enjoy being on CNN. And I have little children, so that's on one shoulder. On the other shoulder, we need more good people in politics. That shoulder's winning. I mean, if there was an election for the 6th congressional seat today, I would probably run for it. I am leaning more and more heavily towards running for Congress when Jim Clyburn decides to step down. I'm not there yet, but I'm leaning more and more heavily towards it.
Well, you know that you have me, you have my supporters behind you 100%. I said it the very first time that we met, more than a decade ago. You're a good man. Things that you're doing are fantastic. Your activism, your comments, you bring really fresh air to what I think is desperately needed in Washington. And obviously, not only do I implore you to decide to make that move eventually and hopefully soon while we still have a country to protect, but maybe contemplate even on that DNC spot, in the interim, because again, the country's worth it, democracy's worth it. We have to leave to our children the country better, certainly than what it looks like we're going to be leaving them.
Right.
So
well, I love you. I love
Bakari,
your family. I love you. I love your family, and I want to smoke a cigar or eat a steak with you in New York in one of those spots that y'all go to. I want to be a part of the vibe soon.
Listen, I can't wait to see you again. So let me know when you're back in town. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for, again, enlightening me, my listeners, and doing the things that you're doing.
Appreciate you, brother. Be safe.
Love to everybody. You got it.